Hi, Corella back again. Next to the last video on verbs. Okay, I think, let's see if we can put all this information that we have today on one video. If not, I'm going to split them up. Okay. Once again, you can and you can't talk about Spanish and English together. Okay. You can and you can't. So let me start with English, as I always do, and then I can go into Spanish. Okay, so first of all, let me say there is no present. I know you've been taught the present tense. There is no past. I know you've been taught the past tense. There is no future. I know you've been taught the future tense. And there is no conditional. Okay, so when we're talking about tenses, we're talking about time and how a culture or how a people divide time. Not every culture and not every people divide time the same way. The way time is divided is culturally constructed. It's culturally bound. Okay? It's culturally bound. So the way someone who speaks English divides time, I will even argue that maybe the way someone who speaks English in England and the way someone speaks English in Australia or in Jamaica, I would even argue that in general terms, we divide time the same, but maybe in particular, no. Because I've heard people speaking English who are Jamaican or from the islands or from like St. Kitts, they use different tenses than I would use. They're not wrong. I'm not wrong. It's just that we see time differently. Okay, so cuando se habla del tiempo, tense en inglés, se habla de los tiempos del verbo. Right? Okay, so no present, no past, no future, no conditional. But there are present tenses. There are past tenses. There are future and conditional tenses. Right? Now, in English, we only have, in general, I mean like super general, right? We only have tenses in the indicative mood when we're giving information. When we're speaking in the subjunctive, one of the reasons we don't know that we're speaking in the subjunctive because we don't have any markings, any distinctions to tell you. In Spanish, you know when I say come or como, right? One is the imperative. I almost had a brain freeze there. One was the imperative. The other is the indicative, and I'm talking about what I do. But if I say que comas, anybody who speaks Spanish knows right away. That's not the indicative, that's not the imperative, that's the subjunctive. They might not know the word, but they know it's different. Que comas. And what I'm really saying is, I want you to eat. But in English, we don't have a comas. But in Spanish, they do. So the reason it's so hard to do tenses in both Spanish and English, because in English, I'm basically only talking about the indicative mood and the tenses in that mood. And the imperative, and that's very easy because, it's just a matter of just taking everything off and it's just talk, walk, sleep, eat. In Spanish, you have to talk about tenses in the present, in the indicative mood, and also in the subjunctive mood. So, I'm going to do it, but mostly it's going to be, if not, it's going to spill over into one more tape on tenses. Okay, so here we go. You have the present tense, says. So you have the simple present tense or the present indicative. You have the, you have the present progressive, the present perfect progressive, the present perfect. Okay, so here it is. So let me give you an example, because I can't give it to you for all tenses because I'll be here all day long. So what do you have? So you have I speak. That's the present indicative. Present progressive, I am speaking. The present perfect, I have spoken. The present perfect progressive, I have been speaking. That's the present tense, says. In Spanish sería hablo, estoy hablando, he hablado, he estado hablando. And if you're going to use it in a different mood, if you're going to use it in the subjunctive, is que hablas. Que hablas. No, que hables. Excuse me. Oh, that sounded wrong. Que hables. Okay? So in English, in Spanish, I always have to put that last point on it in a subjunctive mood. Okay. And I could say, oh, que hables, que hayas hablado, que hayas estado hablando. It can get complicated. Because it's hard for me to do it out of context. Right? And this, once again, you have to study. But I'm just giving you a taste of what it is, but really you have to study it. Okay, in the past tense says you have, I'm going to give a regular verb because if I do irregular, it can go crazy. Let me see, I'm going to go back to talk. So it's present, simple present, talked. Simple past, talked. In Spanish sería hablé. Past, let me see. Not past participle. Past perfect, had talked. So it would be había hablado. Past progressive, was talking. Sería estaba hablando or estuve hablando, because there's two in Spanish, right? Then it would be past perfect progressive. Había estado hablando. No, that's English. Yeah, that's Spanish. Había estado hablando, which in English would be I had been talking. Right? Now, these, which I'm not going to do right here, all of these in English can be also put in the subjunctive mood. These are the indicative moods, but they can be put in the subjunctive mood. Quería que hablaras. Right? Hubieras hablado. Right? Those are things you have to study. So, there is no present, past, future, conditional. There are only past tenses. Los tiempos del pasado, los tiempos del presente, los tiempos del futuro, los tiempos del, ¿cómo se llama? Del condicional. Right? And tenses are important. They make such a difference in understanding a sentence. In English, you basically have your tenses only in the indicative mood. In Spanish, you have it in both. And I say both are strongly represented. The indicative, which would be hablo, and the subjunctive, which would be, as an example, hable. So, hablo español, que hables español. And they're important. But they help you really to understand not just the language or culture, how the people think. So we're doing one more, and we're doing on the active versus the passive voice. And then basically speaking, we have the verbs, as far as verbs are concerned, in both Spanish and in English. Thank you. Corella Ficklin, McLean, iStudyGuides.com.